The gatherer had a problem. She had meat, a fresh haunch of deer, bloody and heavy. She had fire, the low, steady flames the elder had kept alive since dawn, but she had nothing to put the meat in. No metal pan, no clay pot, no boiling water. If she dropped the meat directly into the flames, it would char on the outside and stay raw within. If she held it over the fire on a stick, the juices would drip into the coals and the meat would dry to leather. She needed a way to cook that did not yet exist. So she invented one, and she invented it using nothing but stones, leaves, and the stomach of the animal she had just killed. How did early humans cook before pots? The answer is a master class in improvisation, and it begins with a hole in the ground. Long before pots, there was the earth oven. The hunter had seen the elder make one many times. You dig a pit in the ground, knee-deep, wide enough to fit a whole leg of deer. You line the pit with flat stones. Then you build a massive fire on top of those stones, and let it burn until the stones are so hot, they glow a dull, angry red. You rake away the ashes. You lay the meat directly onto the stones. You cover everything with leaves, grass, and a thick layer of dirt, and then you wait, not minutes, hours. The heat trapped inside the earth does the work. The meat steams in its own juices, tenderizing slowly. The smoke from the leaves seeps into the flesh. By the time the elder scraped the dirt away, the meat was falling off the bone. The child, who had been hungry all day, ate until her face was greasy. The earth oven was slow, but it was reliable. It could cook a whole animal. It could feed a band of 20, and it required nothing but a hole, some rocks, and patience. But the earth oven was not portable. When the band moved camp, the oven stayed behind. When the hunter brought down a rabbit at midday, he did not want to dig a pit and wait 4 hours. He wanted food now. So the gatherer found a faster way. The gatherer took a flat, smooth stone from the river and set it directly in the fire. She let it heat until a drop of water sizzled and danced on its surface. Then she pulled it out with 2 sticks, laid it on a patch of grass, and pressed thin strips of meat onto the stone. They hissed, they seared, they cooked in seconds. The first griddle was a rock, the first frying pan was the ground. But what about water? Boiling was the trickiest problem of all. You cannot boil water in a wooden bowl. The fire burns the wood before the water gets hot. You cannot boil water in a hide bag for the same reason. Early humans solved this with an invention so clever it still feels like magic. They took an animal's stomach, fresh, still wet, still strong, and filled it with water. They hung it from a tripod of sticks just above the ground. Then they took stones from the fire, stones so hot they cracked when they touched the air, and dropped them into the stomach. The water boiled almost instantly, bubble after bubble, steam rising. The stomach did not burn because the water inside kept it cool. As long as they kept adding hot stones, the water stayed at a rolling boil. The hunter watched in amazement the first time he saw the gatherer do this. She was boiling bones into broth in a bag made of guts, heated by rocks, suspended from twigs. It was the first soup, and it was made without a pot. The same method worked with a hollowed log, a folded bark tray, or even a large shell. The container did not have to be fireproof, it just had to hold water. The stones brought the heat, the water protected the container. This technique, stone boiling, was used on every inhabited continent tens of thousands of years before pottery was invented. But stone boiling was slow and tedious. You had to keep adding hot stones to maintain the temperature. You had to replace the stomach when it rotted. The gatherer dreamed of a container that could sit directly in the fire and not burn. The answer was under her feet: mud, clay. When early humans noticed that the ground around their fire pits became hard and waterproof, they experimented. They shaped clay into rough bowls and set them in the coals. The first attempts shattered, the second attempts cracked, the third attempts held. Someone, perhaps the artist, who worked with ochre and clay to make pigments, realized that if you mixed crushed shells or sand into the wet clay, it was less likely to break when heated. That was the invention of temper. The first pottery was not beautiful. It was lumpy, lopsided, and as thick as a finger, but it could sit in a fire, it could boil water, it could hold stew. The child watched the gatherer place a clay pot directly into the flames, and stared in wonder as the water inside bubbled without a single hot stone. The pot did not burn. The pot did not leak. The age of pots had begun. Pots changed everything. They allowed early humans to boil tough plants until they were edible. They allowed them to render fat, to stew meat, to cook grains. They made food softer, safer, and easier to digest. The elder, whose teeth were worn down to stubs from a lifetime of chewing raw and roasted meat, could finally eat porridge. The child, who had nearly died from a sickness caught from bad water, now drank boiled broth. The first pots were not just kitchen tools, they were life-saving technology. But the invention of the pot did not make the old ways disappear. The earth oven was still used for feasts, the hot stone griddle was still used for quick meals, the stomach bag, the bark tray, the shell, all of them persisted for thousands of years after pottery arrived, and in some parts of the world they persist today. Stone boiling was used by Native American tribes into the 19th century. Earth ovens are still dug for traditional feasts across the Pacific. The first cooking methods were so effective that we have never entirely abandoned them. Next time you turn on a stove, remember the stomach bag full of boiling water. Remember the pit of glowing stones. Remember the gatherer, standing by the fire, with nothing but rocks, leaves, and a dead animal's gut, inventing the kitchen from scratch. The pots we use today are just refined mud. The techniques we use today were born in the dirt and the ashes. Cooking did not begin with a pot. Cooking began with a problem, and a human mind determined to solve it. If you had to cook a meal without a single pot or pan, what would you do? Tell me your prehistoric recipe below. I read everyone.